Okay. All right. So this course is primarily concerned with differential equations. Okay. So please let me know if my font and the way of writing is legible to you. Um, if not, I can always make adjustments. Okay. So the first question is, why do you need differential equations? Okay, so this is at this point a rather moot point, because I know that all of you are scientists and engineers who have already seen and gone through courses that actually used differential equations. For example, I think all of you have done PH 101, where you studied electromagnetism and quantum mechanics, which were all subjects that were based on differential equations. But still, let's try to motivate why you might need differential equations for somebody that has not seen this before, right? Differential equations play a central part whenever you want to model some kind of a dynamics. Okay, so if you have a physical system or an engineering setting where something depends on something else, and you want to understand how this thing varies as you vary the other parameter. In such cases, it's always useful to express things as a differential equation. So it is very useful, for example, in a modeling setting. Suppose if you want to model a physics situation or an engineering situation, differential equations is the way to go. Okay, I'm not saying that this is the only way, but this is the most common way in which one understands the dynamics of physical systems. So as an example, let us start with an example because I'm sure all of you have seen this before. An example of modeling that you see is, for example, in radioactive decay. Okay. So what is it that we are trying to understand when we are looking at an unstable atom? Well, we are saying that, look, there is some amount of atoms at this particular point of time. And if I wait for some more time, how many atoms will remain? Obviously, the number should be less than the initial number because the atoms are decaying, right? So this is an example of a radioactive decay. And now you want to try and understand this. So this is the system. You have a system, you have a big box, probably you don't go very near it, of decaying atoms, and you want to understand how it decays. You want to understand the question, how? Okay, so I'm not saying why, I'm saying how. So then you model the system. The way you model the system, as you well know, is to try and guess how things can change. So for example, you want to understand, suppose if the number at any time, any instant of time is n of t, you want to understand how this changes with respect to time. So you want to understand dn over dt as a function of time. And then you posit that, look, the rate of decay is going to be more if I have more stuff that is present. The rate of decay is going to be less if I have less stuff that is going to be present. So as a zeroth order approximation, the way I can understand the system is if I say that the rate of decay is actually proportional to the number that is already present. Okay, so this is one way you can model. So this is a proportionality sign. Unfortunately, looks like alpha. Okay, so this is one way you can start thinking about this physical system. You model the physical system, right? You have taken your first steps into writing the differential equation for this particular system, which you have already seen before, I'm sure. So what is the next step? The next step is, of course, to solve this differential equation. So I will turn this proportionality into an equation and claim that dn dt is some constant c times n. Of course, everything is a function of time. And you know how to integrate this equation and get a formal solution. We'll talk about this as we move along, but I just want to give you the solution in this particular example. The way you do this is rearrange this equation. dn over n is c dt, and then you integrate both sides, right? So when you integrate both sides, you get logarithm of n is ct plus some constant. Let's call this constant some a, okay? And then you can, of course, rearrange this to write n is some a e to the ct. And then you stare at this solution and you realize that this is terribly wrong. This is terribly wrong because this tends to predict that as time goes on, the number of atoms that remain is exponentially growing. Of course, I don't want this situation because I'm trying to model a decay, right? I'm trying to model something that is going down in time, not increasing. So you realize that, look, this is not the correct way to model this. Maybe the way I should model this is I should probably have some kind of a negative here because I want it to decay and not grow exponentially. So you claim that my starting point should not be proportional to n, but let us say that I put a minus sign. Okay. Now, if I consistently put in this negative sign everywhere, here and here, it will feed into this equation as a e to the minus ct. Okay. And now this makes sense because this tells you that, look, if you start with some number at any point of time, the number of atoms that remain is exponentially smaller. Now, is this correct or wrong? That is a slightly different question. We will come to this. It at least has the right property. It has the property that as time increases, the number remaining decreases. Yes, please ask. Somebody had a question. No? So if you can, please unmute and ask because I'm not able to see the chat window. Okay. So now the question is, how do I fix A? Okay, this is an example of what is called an initial value problem. What is an initial value problem? An initial value problem is one in which you are given some kind of a constraint your solution has to follow. Right now, my solution is valid for any A. I can fix A to be 250 billion and it's still okay. Okay. But in a real physical system, there has to be some constraint. The constraint is usually given as follows. At some particular instant, this is what has been actually seen. Okay. In this particular case, for example, I can claim that at t equal to 0, when I actually start the measurement and count the number of atoms that remain, my n of t is actually n0. Somebody has actually counted that there is, for example, 25,000 atoms there. So n0 would be 25. So the way I formulate this problem is by claiming that I have a differential equation. So dn dt equals minus cn. Okay. And I also have a condition that at t equal to 0, n of t is n0. So not only should I solve the differential equation written on the first step, I should solve it subject to the condition that at time t equal to 0, my solution should actually show that n is n0. So I need to, the question is to solve this. And when I say this, I mean this differential equation subject to this condition. Okay. So this is how you typically solve an initial value problem. So if I have to impose this condition, what will I do? Well, I'll take my general solution, which is n of t is a e to the minus ct. Okay. And then I will basically demand that at time t equal to 0, this fits this condition. So at t equal to 0, my left-hand side is n0 because that's what somebody has told me. My right-hand side is, if I put t equal to 0, the exponential becomes 1. So this is equal to a. So the solution, so the initial value condition typically fixes the constant, the undetermined constant of integration. Okay, so I can write my solution finally as n0 e to the minus ct. Okay. Now the question is this correct or wrong? For example, I can as well model this system by claiming that dn dt is proportional to, look, I know that it has to decrease, so there'll be some negative sign is present, maybe okay. But why should it decrease proportional to n? Maybe it's proportional to n squared or n cubed or n to the 5, right? So this is not a question that the differential equation itself can answer. Of course, you can go through the entire same steps, and this is a different differential equation, which you can again solve and again write down the solution. So which one do you know is correct? A priori, just by writing things down on paper, you do not know. So you have to make connection with experiment. So experiment or observation or whatever it is. So there has to be some external input. And whichever stands this external observation is the actual correct law or correct modeling. Okay, so currently we have one model where dn dt was proportional to n, but we could also write down a model where dn dt is proportional to n squared, right? So a priori we do not know, but the way you test models is by making connection with actual observations. So we will be not talking about the second part of, we will not actually be talking about modeling in general, but I gave this example to you as a motivation because it is very useful to know in what setting, under what constraints differential equations apply. Okay. Any questions about any of this? Any questions or any comments? I'm sure all of you have seen this radioactive decay law before, but it's still a very interesting example to set up the subject. Okay. All right. So to begin our study of differential equations, of course, let us go through some basics. Okay, so today we will be talking, and today and also probably this week, we'll be talking about stuff that is rather basic. And let us first set up the terminology. So what is the terminology? Okay. So differential equations can be broadly classified into two different kinds, right? So differential equations are ordinary differential equations and partial differential equations. Okay. Ordinary differential equations, for example, are stuff like the one that we just discussed, right? So d square y over dt square is minus omega square y, right? This is a very famous second order differential equation. This is the simple harmonic equation, right? So where the solution y depends on only one parameter that you have to fix, y of t. So solution means find y as a function of time. Okay. I can actually make this a little more complicated, but as long as it depends only on one variable, this is an ordinary differential equation. So for example, I can have equation like y double prime y cubed plus 2xy equal to 10, for example, right? This certainly is more complicated than the first equation, but it still depends on only one parameter, which is x. So y double prime is usually a shorthand notation for d square y over dx square, and y prime is a shorthand notation for dy over dx. Okay, so I'm sure you're aware of this, but it's still important to set up the notation. So these are examples of what are called ordinary differential equations, where the solution y depends on only one parameter that you have to find. There is also a different class of equations called partial differential equations. And I'm sure you have come across examples of partial differential equations, for example, in a physics study. One example is, right? So I'm sure you guys spend a lot of time understanding this equation. This is called the Laplace equation in electrodynamics, right? This is the equation that determines the electrostatic potential phi. So the way you write this equation is, for example, if I spell it out in terms of the Cartesian coordinates, this will be d square phi over dy square plus d square phi over dz square equals 0. So phi here is a function of three variables, x, y, and z. And this differential equation involves derivatives with respect to all the variables x and y and z. So if phi only depends on x, then I will write this as d phi dx. This is an ordinary derivative. But if phi depends on a bunch of things, and if I only want to extract, or if I only want to understand how phi varies with respect to x, then I will write d phi dx with this little curly d's. Okay, so usually people have a bad habit of calling this dou. Please don't do that. So this is still d phi dx, but it's just a slightly different symbol. So this is an ordinary derivative. And this is a partial derivative. Partial because it also depends on other things which we are suppressing for the moment, and we only want to extract how it depends on one particular variable, which we will call x in this example. Okay. Another example of a partial differential equation is the Schrodinger equation that you studied in your second half of PH 101, right? So minus h bar square over 2m, or rather, IH bar d psi dt equals h psi. Okay, here psi is a function of both position and time, and the h, the Hamiltonian operator, involves differentials with respect to position, and the left-hand side involves differentials with respect to time. This is what is called the time-dependent Schrodinger equation, right? So these are all examples of partial differential equations where you have to fix how the solution varies, not with respect to just one variable, but multiple variables. Okay. So of course, it needless to say that ODEs are slightly easier to study than PDEs. So that's why we will start our study with ODEs. Okay. So the first half of this course is ODEs roughly, and the second half is PDE. But if you actually look at the course plan, I think there is a little more weightage given to ODEs, but not much. This is basically because this is the introduction to the subject, so we have to spend a little more time on this particular half. Okay. So again, going on with setting up the terminologies, we always talk about solution to a differential equation. So before we talk about solutions, let us also fix what we mean by order, right? So initially, in this week, we will be studying what are called first order differential equation. First order means that the derivative is only of a form dy dx. Okay, this is a first order. So any equation that involves only dy dx is called a first order differential equation. If an equation involves both dy dx and d square y over dx square, it is called a second order differential equation. So the order of a differential equation is the highest derivative that is there in that equation. So for example, dy dx plus 3x equal to 0 is a first order. D square y over dx square plus 3x dy dx plus y equal to 10 is a second order. Even though the second equation has both first order and second order derivatives, it is the highest order that counts. I can also write y triple prime y prime plus 3x. I don't know why I like 3x. So cancel this. I don't know, some x square y equal to 0. This is a third order differential equation, so on and so forth. Of course, we will only be studying second order differential equations in this course. It so happens that most of nature involves only second order differential equations. I'm not sure there is a deep reason for it. That's how things are. For example, the most famous second order differential equation that you're already familiar with, right from, I don't know, 6th standard or something, is Newton's second law, right? So you start with F equals ma. Force equals mass times acceleration. And of course, you can turn this into a differential equation that tells you how, given a force that acts on a particle, how does its trajectory look like? In other words, how does the position of the particle change as a function of time? So you turn this into a differential equation d square x of t over dt square, which is acceleration, is 1 over mf. Okay. This, of course, is three different equations. You write one equation for x, one equation for y, one equation for z, and then you put them all together and you figure out how the particle travels in space and time. So this is the fundamental problem of classical mechanics. And you solve this assuming that, for example, at some instant of time t equal to t naught, the particle was at x is equal to x0 and had a velocity v equals v0. So it's also an initial value problem when you formulate it that way. Okay. So that is the order. And for the first 2 or 3 lectures, we will only be looking at first order differential equations that are fairly straightforward to solve. So when I say solve, I should also tell you what is a solution. Again, this might be so silly, but it is still important to understand what it is. So for example, a first order differential equation can always be written as some function capital F of y prime, y, and x is equal to 0. Okay. Or you can write this as an equation for y prime explicitly. I can write this as y prime equals some function of x and y. Okay. So this is sometimes called the implicit form. And this is sometimes called the explicit form. Of course, we can always go from the implicit to the explicit form by simply solving for y prime. So needless to say. Okay. So what is a solution? When I say that, for example, y equals h of x is a solution, then what I mean is that if I plug h of x in this differential equation, I get an identity. Okay. So what does it mean even more explicitly? Let us say that you have a differential equation like y prime equals, I don't know, ky. Okay. The solution for this equation I know is y of x is some a e to the kx. How do I know this is a solution? Well, I simply differentiate this equation and I figure out what y prime is. What is y prime from this differential equation? Y prime is, if I differentiate y of x, I get ak e to the kx, and then substitute this back in the differential equation. You get the left hand side is ak e to the kx, and the right hand side is k times y, which is a e to the kx, which is an identity. Okay. So in some domain of x, I don't know, from x is equal to a to b or whatever it is, if your solution has the property that if you feed it back into the differential equation, you get left hand side equals right hand side an identity, then you claim to have found a solution h of x in this particular interval. Okay. Now it might be that it might not be a valid solution outside this interval, and that is okay. So you always make the claim that, you know, in this particular interval, my solution has all the right forms and it is a valid solution. So that is what I mean by solving a differential equation. So sometimes it is possible that there is redundancy in the problem. Okay, so for example, if you take the equation y prime equals cosine x or y prime equals sine x, some simple example like that, you can solve this differential equation using very simple integration, right? Or even if you didn't know how to solve a differential equation formally, you can actually guess that, you know, what is the function that when differentiated will give you cosine. It is a sine, right? So obviously the solution is y of x is sine x. But that is not the solution. That's not the most general solution. I can add an arbitrary integration constant plus c. Okay. Why? Because since c is a constant, differentiating this doesn't affect c at all. So any additive stuff added to sine x is also a solution of the parent differential equation. Okay. So if I plot my solution, so this is x and this is y. If I put c equal to 0, of course, I get the familiar sine curve, right? Forgive my drawing. But if you put c equal to, I don't know, 5, 10, 15, 20, whatever it is, you will get things that are displaced in the y-axis, right? Like this for various values. Sorry, the waveform will not change, but it could be displaced, right? In this particular example, whatever it is. I've not drawn it to scale, but you understand what I'm trying to say. Okay. So in such cases, we talk about a family of solution curves. Okay. So by fixing C to various numbers, you get a whole family of equations. Okay. There is no sense in saying this is the first guy is the solution, the second guy is not, because all of them satisfy the differential equation. So a priori, there is no reason for us to choose one over the other unless some external constraint is given to us. Okay. This is the most general solution that we can write down for this particular problem. Okay. So when I say a solution, I can also mean that there is in general a family of solution curves that might exist, and one has to be aware of this. The last thing that I want to talk about today briefly is, before I do the last thing, are there any questions about any of this? I'm sure much of this is rather basic, but if you do have any questions, if there is anybody who has not seen any of this before, please do speak up. Okay. So last thing that I want to talk about is understanding the geometric meaning of the first order differential equations. Okay. And we will introduce what are called direction fields. It sounds complicated, but it's actually quite simple to understand. Excuse me. So if you have y as a function of x, right? You guys know by now that y prime equals dy by dx is basically the slope. So at any point x is equal to x0, if I draw a tangent, that gives me the derivative with respect to x, that is the slope. So the same thing, the same geometric meaning carries forward in this also. So I will start with the explicit form of the differential equation. I will write a solution. I will write a differential equation of the form y prime equals f of x comma y. Okay. So of course, since y is a function of x, y prime is, I can again interpret this to be the slope. Okay, at some particular point, x is equal to x0. So suppose if I have, if I sketch one particular solution like this, I don't know if this is the only solution or there is a family of solution, but I'm just looking at one particular solution. Right? Suppose if I look at some particular point, let us say x0 here. Right? So, and then I figure out the slope here. What is the slope at this particular point? The slope at this particular point is f of x0, y. Okay. So the same geometric interpretation carries through. So the question is, how is this useful in the study of differential equations? It might come in handy in case you have a differential equation for which the solution is not readily apparent. Okay, suppose if I give you a differential equation with any, I don't know, trigonometric forms or exponentials or anything standard, I'm sure you guys will be able to solve it much faster than I can. Even non-standard forms, I'm sure you have done many examples. But suppose if there is some equation in which the solution is not, for example, readily apparent. So example would be y prime equals something like ay plus bx. Okay. Now this I cannot get by a ready-made integration, right? So if I integrate the left-hand side, of course, I get y, but to figure out the right-hand side, I already need to know what is y of x because I need to integrate y. So this is not very useful. Direct integration will not be very useful in this particular regard. So suppose if I'm confronted with a case like this, suppose if I'm looking at something like this, where I cannot solve it readily by analytical means, is there any way in which this geometric picture might help? Is there any way in which I can sort of understand how these solutions might look like, even though I might not be able to derive them from scratch? The answer is yes. Okay, so let us take a simple example of y prime. Let us fix a and b to be 1 each, y plus x. Okay. Since y prime is the slope, what is it that this equation is telling me? So suppose if I am able to draw a solution curve like this, then at every single point in this xy plane, for any single pair of x and y, the solution at that particular point in the plane is basically the slope at that particular point, right? So instead of looking at this as a differential equation, for example, let me look at this as an algebraic equation and simply figure out what is y prime at every single point in this xy plane. Okay. Now, obviously, this is an extremely laborious issue, and I don't mean it in the literal sense, but I just want to give you an idea of how things look like. So at what point do I look like? At what point do I have to figure out the slope? I don't know. You have to figure it out in the entire xy plane if you want to understand the solution. But let us just look at some kind of a region around the origin. Okay. So let me fix, for example, x is equal to 0. And then I'll look at various points y, and at each point y, I'll fix what is y prime. Since y prime is yx, let me look at, for example, from y equal to -3 to +3. Okay. So I'll fix y to be -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, and 3. And I'll fix x to be 0. Okay, at each single point, I need to figure out the slope, and I know how to figure out the slope because the solution to my differential equation should follow y prime equals y plus x. So y prime should be -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, and 3. So I know numerically how the slope looks like at all these points in the xy plane. I can do it for any other value of x also. For example, I can do it for x is equal to 1. Okay, and I'll do it for the same values, -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, and 3. And I can figure out the slope. Since y prime is y plus x, in my particular example, this will be -2, -1, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. What have I achieved? Well, I might not know the solution, but I do know how the solution looks like. The flow of the solution looks like. What do I mean by that? So let me try and plot this. And I should warn you before I'm plotting it that this will be extremely rough, because the only way you can actually do this properly is using some kind of a computer program. But let me try to attempt what I mean. Okay. So let us say this is -1, -2, and -3. Okay. And this is actually, let me make it 2 units so it's easy for me to plot. So this is -1, -2, -3, and so on. This is 1, 2, 3, and similarly, this is x is equal to -1, blah, blah, blah. So what do I mean? What do these tables, what do these numbers tell me? At the point x is equal to 0, y equal to -3, the slope is -3. Okay, so it is falling with a magnitude equal to 3. So let me use green. So let me actually indicate this by a small arrow at that particular point. So at that particular point, my solution to the differential equation should be such that the slope at x is equal to 0, y equal to -3 should be -3. So it should be falling. So I will denote this by a falling line. So if you want, you can also put a small arrow here. At the point x is equal to 0, y equals -2, it is again falling, but it is falling less steeply, right? It has a slope 2, but it is still falling. So I'll call this by this. Okay. And at the point 0, -1, it is again falling, but more gradually. At the point 0, 0, of course, it is 0. So I'll just call this by a flat line. At the point 0, 1, it is now rising with a slope 1. At the point 0, 2, it's again rising, but a bit more steeply this time, and so on and so forth. Okay. So I see some kind of a flow pattern emerging. And if I am very, very patient and I had a lot of time, I can do this for every single point. Of course, if I only do it for 1, 2, 3, -1, 2, 3, I won't be able to see what the general pattern is. But if you assume that I can do it for all possible values, as fine a mesh as possible, then I will be able to see, for example, how the solution flows in this particular case of y prime equal to y plus x. Okay, so let me say that the flow is something like this. I don't know. It goes like this. Again, this is all very rough because I literally cannot plot all of these things. I assume that there is some kind of a flow. This is the value of the slope at every particular point. Okay. Now, again, I do not know what the solution is, but now I can sort of guess roughly what the solution might look like, even though I don't have an analytic form for it. The way I will do it is as follows. Suppose if somebody pulls me and says, look, suppose if I look at some particular point, x is equal to -1 and y equal to x is equal to 0 and y equals -1. How does my solution around this point look like? Then I'll simply zoom in and look at my arrows and simply follow my arrows. Okay, so suppose if all of this here goes like this. Okay, and here it goes very steeply like this. Then I can claim that simply by joining these arrows around x is equal to 0, y equal to -1, at that particular point, my solution curve should be somewhat like this. Okay, if I look at a different point, x is equal to 0, y equal to 0, the origin, then I will simply look at everything from the origin, join all the little arrows, and then draw something like this. It is flat at the origin, it doesn't have any slope, and then maybe it rises this way. I don't know. Okay, so you can make a qualitative estimate of how the solution looks like by drawing these little lines all over the xy parameter plane. Of course, it is not possible to do it by hand, but you can always use a computer program to do this. And simply drawing all these little arrows, you simply can connect them around any particular point and have a rough idea as to how the solution around that point looks like. These little arrows are called direction fields. Okay. They are simply born out of the geometric interpretation of a given ordinary first order differential equation by simply claiming that y prime is just the slope. So I can, by brute force, compute the slope at every particular point in the xy parameter plane subject to the differential equation. And I draw these little directed line segments all over. And then if I'm asked what is a solution around one particular point, I simply join all the arrows around that particular point, and that is how my solution curve should look like. Okay, this solution curve might not be exact, but in many cases, if you make the mesh finer and finer, it is actually a very good approximation as to what the actual solution curve might look like. So in case analytic solutions are not always possible, such geometric and such numerical techniques do exist, and you should be aware of them. Okay. So we will stop at this point today, and tomorrow, again, I remind you that you will have a comment session where we discuss the course policies, and then we will continue the lectures again on Thursday. So